In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. When a man hurts a chosen woman, the entire atmosphere around her begins to shift. Because a chosen woman is not an ordinary woman. She is a vessel God has set apart, strengthened, refined, and wrapped in a destiny larger than her pain. Listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you has the power to transform the way you see your heart break forever. When a chosen woman is wounded, it is not just her tears that fall. It is the sound of her spirit awakening, the sound of her destiny rearranging, the sound of God preparing to elevate her in ways she cannot yet see. And the man who thought he shattered her heart has no idea that he has only set her on the path of becoming the most powerful version of herself. I want you to feel the weight of this truth. God never allows a chosen woman to be hurt without intention, without purpose, without a divine plan stitched behind every moment of disappointment. A chosen woman walks with a spiritual covering, music that not everyone can understand. She carries an anointing that makes her love deeper, music her loyalty stronger, her faith unshakable. So when she is mistreated, overlooked, betrayed, or taken for granted, the pain becomes a classroom in which God himself begins to teach her who she truly is. The hurt becomes holy ground. The suffering becomes a sacred turning because a chosen woman is not destroyed by heartbreak. She is refined by it, strengthened by it, awakened through it. Her wounds do not end her. They transform her into a force the world was not ready for. A woman whose steps become sharper, whose voice becomes clearer, and whose spirit becomes unbreakable. A man may break her trust, but he cannot break her purpose. He may confuse her emotions, but he cannot derail her destiny. He may walk away from her, but he cannot remove the favor God has placed on her life. When a chosen woman is hurt, God draws nearer to her. God stands closer than her breath. God begins to whisper to her in ways she never heard before. The man believes she is alone, but she is more surrounded than ever, surrounded by divine protection, surrounded by spiritual clarity, surrounded by a strength that does not come from the world. What the man thought was her breaking point becomes her birthing point. What he thought would weaken her becomes the very fire that awakens her music voice. What he thought would silence her becomes the moment she remembers who she is. God's chosen, God's handcrafted masterpiece, God's daughter wrapped in destiny. A chosen woman does not stay broken for long because her spirit is too anchored in God to remain in the rubble of someone else's foolishness. Her heart is too valuable to stay in the hands of someone who does not understand its worth. Her life is too divine to be trapped by someone's inconsistency. So when she is hurt, God begins to elevate her. God lifts her above the situation. God removes the veil from her eyes and reveals the truth she once ignored. God shows her why the hurt was necessary, why the separation was protection, why the betrayal was the beginning of her transformation. When a man hurts a chosen woman, he is not simply hurting a woman. He's interfering with someone God has an assignment on. And whenever someone tries to damage what God has blessed, they eventually face the consequences of touching what is sacred. Not because the chosen woman seeks revenge, but because God restores balance. God defends the humble. God protects the brokenhearted. God uplifts the faithful. A chosen woman does not fight her battles with music, anger, or retaliation. Her silence becomes her weapon. Her tears become her prayer, and her surrender becomes her victory. The man who hurt her has no idea that he is fighting a war. He cannot win because he is fighting against the one God is not finished with. A chosen woman's pain carries power. Her heartbreak carries revelation. Her tears carry authority. She does not fall apart. She evolves. She does not crumble. She rises. She does not drown in sorrow. She learns to walk music on waves that were supposed to destroy her. The man's rejection becomes the reason she reconnects with God on a deeper level. His neglect becomes the push that drives her into spiritual awakening. His absence becomes the space where God fills her with new strength, music, new wisdom, new confidence. The pain becomes the bridge between who she was musicking and who she is meant to become. A chosen woman is dangerous after she has been hurt because she comes out of the fire with sharper discernment. She sees differently. She hears differently. She chooses differently. She no longer tolerates mediocrity, manipulation, or half-love wrapped in sweet words. She becomes spiritually sensitive, emotionally mature, mentally fortified. She becomes a fortress no man can casually enter. Her boundaries strengthen. Her standards rise. Her intuition sharpens. And the man who once hurt her realizes too late that he lost a woman who was a blessing in disguise. But understand this, a chosen woman does not hate the man who hurt her. She does not wish him harm. She does not hold grudges. She simply outgrows him. She rises above him. She transcends the stage of life where he belonged. Because when God elevates a chosen woman, he separates her from anything that weakens her spirit, not out of punishment, but out of protection, not out of anger, but out of purpose. God removes people who mishandled her music because her destiny requires stronger companionship, deeper commitment, and purer music intention. When a chosen woman is heard, her connection to God intensifies. She prays differently. She listens differently. She becomes more aware of the spiritual movements around her. Pain opens her eyes. Heartbreak awakens her spiritual senses. She begins to understand that her worth does not come from a man's attention, but from God's intention. She starts to walk with a new posture, one of dignity, self-respect, and divine awareness. She stops chasing, begging, explaining, or shrinking. She steps into her identity, into her calling, into the power God has placed within her. She becomes a woman who knows her value, and a woman who knows her value becomes unstoppable. The man who hurt her may assume she will always be available, always be waiting, always be holding on. But he misunderstands the nature of a chosen woman. She loves deeply, but she also heals deeply. She forgives generously, but she also moves on gracefully. She does not stay where God is no longer present. She does not cling to what God is trying to remove. Once God whispers to her spirit that it is time to walk away, she leaves with peace, strength, and clarity. She leaves not broken, but reborn. She leaves not empty, but overflowing. She leaves not in anger, but in alignment. A chosen woman's departure is silent but powerful. When she walks away, her absence speaks louder than her presence ever did. It forces the man to confront himself, to face the emptiness he created, to realize the depth of what he lost. God does not allow a chosen woman to be mistreated without bringing revelation to music those who hurt her. And when that revelation comes, it is often too late for the man to recover what he lost. Because once God closes a door for a chosen woman, no one can open it again, not even the one who slam it shut. But listen closely, the chosen woman must understand her own significance. She must recognize that her heartbreak is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of selection. God allows the break so he can rebuild her differently. God allows the pain so he can reposition her. God allows the tears so he can cleanse her spirit. God allows the separation so he can prepare her for something far greater. Pain is not punishment for a chosen woman. It is preparation. It is purification. It is transformation. When a man hurts a chosen woman, he unknowingly pushes her toward the version of herself that God intended all along. He pushes her into prayer. He pushes her music into discipline. He pushes her into clarity. He pushes her into healing. He pushes her into purpose. He pushes her into the arms of God where she should have been all along. And once she reconnects deeply with the one who created her, she becomes a woman. No heartbreak can destroy. No betrayal can weaken. No man can diminish. The chosen woman begins to understand that not every man who enters her life is meant to stay. Some come to teach her discernment. Some come to teach her boundaries. Some come to teach her patience. Some come to teach her strength. And some come to teach her how to return to God with her whole heart. The hurt becomes the teacher. The heartbreak becomes the lesson. The disappointment becomes the awakening. And she rises with wisdom that only pain could have revealed. The chosen woman realizes that her heart is too precious to be handled carelessly. Music, she becomes more selective with her energy. Music, more protective of her peace, more discerning about intentions. She stops giving her heart to men who are not spiritually aligned with her. She stops entertaining words that are not backed by action. She stops accepting half commitment from men who cannot meet her depth. Her spirit matures, her mind sharpens, her heart becomes wiser, and the man who hurt her becomes the chapter that taught her everything she needed to know to step into her destiny unafraid. A chosen woman's value multiplies after heartbreak. She becomes more compassionate but not naive, more loving but not desperate, more understanding but not foolish, more patient but not passive. She becomes a woman of depth, of strength, of quiet confidence. Her presence becomes powerful. Her energy becomes magnetic. Her voice becomes authority. She carries herself with a grace that cannot be imitated and a dignity that cannot be diminished. And God, seeing her faithfulness through the pain, begins to reward her openly. God begins to restore the years she lost. God begins to elevate her above everything that once hurt her. God begins music to place people in her life who honor her, respect her, protect her, and value her. God begins to align her steps with music, blessings she never imagined, opportunities she never expected, and abundance she never saw coming, because God never allows a chosen woman to remain in the shadows of someone else's mistreatment. He brings her into the light, into clarity, into purpose. The man who hurt her fades into the background of her past. His words lose their power. His actions lose their sting. His presence loses its influence. Because once God heals a chosen woman, he restores her in fullness, not halfway, not partially, completely. She rises from heartbreak, stronger, wiser music, and more spiritually aligned than ever before. She realizes the hurt did not destroy her. It delivered her. It did not weaken her. It strengthened her. It did not diminish her. It refined her. And when she finally understands who she is and who God is in her life, she becomes a woman no music man can easily break again, because she has walked through fire and came out glowing. She has survived storms and learned to die. NCE in the rain. She has faced heartbreak and discovered the power of healing. She has felt loneliness and found comfort in God. She has been hurt, but she has not been defeated. This is the truth every chosen woman must know. Her worth is not measured by how a man treated her, but by how God continues to elevate her. Her future is not determined by the man who betrayed her, but by the God who guides her. Her identity is not defined by heartbreak, but by divine purpose. She is not a victim. She is chosen. She is not broken. She is becoming. She is not abandoned. She is protected. She is not forgotten. She is seen by God. When a chosen woman begins to rise after being wounded, something extraordinary happens in the unseen realm. God starts to shift the atmosphere around her, aligning events, opportunities, and breakthroughs in ways she never experienced before. Her heart, once fragile from disappointment, becomes a place where God plants new strength. Her mind, once clouded by confusion, becomes illuminated with divine clarity. And the pain that once threatened music to silence her becomes the very fuel that propels her into a new dimension of spiritual depth. A chosen woman does not simply recover. She evolves. She transforms into the version of herself that only adversity could have revealed. And the man who once hurt her cannot comprehend how she emerged from the storm, stronger, more focused, music, and more anointed than before. Every wound a chosen woman endures becomes a doorway through which God pours new wisdom. She begins to understand people on a deeper level, detecting intentions that once slipped past her. Her discernment sharpens to the point where she can feel the difference between someone who enters her life to grow with her and someone who enters only to take from her. The hurt rewires her spiritual perception. It makes her more aware of the energies she allows near her heart. It teaches her that peace is not something to negotiate and love is not something to beg for. It reveals that God's protection often comes in the form of removal. And what feels like rejection is sometimes divine redirection. The chosen woman learns that God never strips something away, music, unless he is making room for something better. The relationship that broke her was not the music end. It was the pruning. It was God cutting away what could not grow with her future. It was the release of a weight she was never meant to carry. And though her heart may have shattered in the moment, God was already preparing the expansion that the hurt would bring. When a chosen woman understands this, she no longer questions why the man left or why he caused her pain. Instead, she becomes grateful for the lessons, grateful for the awakening, grateful for the clarity that God used the heartbreak to deliver. Her gratitude becomes her weapon. Her perspective becomes her victory. A chosen woman's silence becomes a divine force. She does not retaliate because she knows who defends her. She does not chase because she knows what God removes cannot bless her. She does not cling because she trusts God's timing more than her emotions. Her restraint confuses the man who hurt her. He expected her collapse, not her composure. He expected her to beg, not to rise. He expected her to remain small, not to grow into a version of herself that now stands taller than his insecurities. He expected her identity to depend on him, not to expand through God. A chosen woman surprises the world with her endurance because she does not run on human strength. She runs on divine purpose. When a chosen woman has been hurt, she undergoes a spiritual recalibration. God begins to remove the illusions she once called love. He exposes the shallowest behind sweet words that lack depth, promises that lack sincerity, and affection that lacked commitment. He reveals the spiritual misalignment that was present all along. And when the scales fall from her eyes, she realizes she was never meant to be music tied to someone who could not honor her heart. In that revelation, she finds freedom, she finds expansion, she finds the courage to choose herself in the presence of God's guidance. Her healing journey becomes a sacred path where each step she takes invites more of God's wisdom into her life. She learns to love herself without apology. She learns to set boundaries without guilt. She learns to walk away from what disturbs her peace. She learns to embrace solitude as a season of refinement rather than punishment. She begins to understand that God often isolates the chosen woman, not to diminish her, but to amplify her. In isolation, she hears God more clearly. In isolation, she uncovers her buried gifts. In isolation, she reconnects with her own spirit. And by the time she emerges, she carries the quiet authority of someone who has wrestled with pain and risen with purpose. The man who hurt her may one day look back and realize he lost what he was not spiritually mature enough to hold. But the chosen woman no longer waits for that realization. She is no longer emotionally tethered to the music idea of closure from someone who could not appreciate her. Her closure comes from God alone. Her healing comes from God alone. Her restoration comes from God alone. What the man failed to see in her, God magnifies. What the man mishandled, God restores. What the man walked away from, God elevates. A chosen woman begins to walk with the divine confidence, quiet yet unshakable. She carries herself with dignity born from knowing God has never left her. She operates with a peace music that confuses those who once undermined her. She speaks with authority because she recognizes her worth is rooted not in human valid, but in divine selection. Her presence becomes light. Her voice becomes strength. Her spirit becomes a testament to God's ability to turn heartbreak into holiness. She no longer doubts her intuition. She no longer silences her needs. She no longer accepts being chosen last. She no longer tolerates emotional instability disguised as passion. Because the moment God reveals her true value, she refuses to settle for anything less than what aligns with her purpose. She recognizes that she was created to be loved with intention, respected with consistency, and honored with sincerity. and anything that falls short of that is beneath her calling. The beauty of a chosen woman is that she thrives. Even when she has every reason to collapse, she rises. Even when she has every reason to break, she loves. Even when she has every reason to harden. But her love becomes wiser, not weaker. Her heart becomes guarded, not cold. Her soul becomes enriched, not bitter. Because she understands that bitterness blocks blessings and resentment suffocates purpose. So she releases the man who hurt her, not for his sake, but for her own liberation. She lets go with grace, not because music he deserved it, but because she deserves peace. God begins to escort her into new seasons, seasons where she attracts people who value her, honor her, and stand with her. She begins to meet individuals whose intentions are pure, whose actions match their words, whose spirits align with hers, and she recognizes them instantly because her discernment has been purified by heartbreak. She no longer confuses attention for commitment. She no longer confuses desire for loyalty. She no longer confuses charm for character. She sees the difference now, and this difference protects her from repeating cycles. Through her healing, God reveals a profound truth. The breakup was not a loss. It was a divine release. She was not being abandoned. She was being prepared. She was not being rejected. She was being redirected. She was not being diminished. She was being elevated. Her tears were temporary, but her transformation is eternal. Her sorrow was passing, but her strength is permanent. A chosen woman becomes a testimony to the world that God's presence is strongest in the moments we feel weakest. Her life becomes evidence that no heartbreak can overpower divine purpose. Her resilience becomes a message that God restores, rebuilds, and replenishes what pain attempted to destroy. She becomes a living reminder that the hurt did not happen to break her. It happened to reveal her. And once she understands this, her spirit gains a new kind music of authority. She walks differently. She speaks differently. She chooses differently. She believes differently. Music, she prays differently. Her faith becomes refined through the very experiences that try to shatter it. Her hope becomes rooted in God, not in the promises of unreliable people. Her joy becomes internal, not dependent on external validation. Her identity becomes unshakable, anchored in the truth that she is chosen, protected, and guided by a power greater than any heartbreak she has endured. She no longer fears being alone because she has walked through loneliness and found God waiting for her. She no longer fears losing people because she learned that anything God removes is something her destiny no longer requires. She no longer fears vulnerability because she knows strength is not the absence of pain, but the courage to rise in spite of it. She no longer fears betrayal because she has discovered that God reveals what is hidden to protect the purity of her heart. The chosen woman becomes unbreakable, not because she has never been broken, but because she has learned how to heal in the hands of God. Every scar becomes a story. Every tear becomes a music every heartbreak becomes a catalyst, and every loss becomes a lesson. She does not return to who music she was. She evolves into someone wiser, deeper, and more spiritually grounded. The chosen woman understands now that her value was never meant to be determined by a man's treatment of her. Her value is determined by the God who crafted her soul with intention and purpose. She realizes she is not defined by who hurt her, but by who healed her, not defined by who left her, but by who lifted her, not defined by the pain she endured, but by the strength she carries. She becomes a vessel of resilience, a symbol of spiritual endurance, a light that shines even after walking through darkness. And when she steps into her new season, she steps with a heart that has been refined by God, a mind that has been strengthened by truth, and a spirit that has been awakened by adversity. When a chosen woman rises from the pain inflicted by a man who never understood her worth, she enters music, a realm of spiritual maturity that cannot be taught by ease, comfort, or smooth seasons. It is in the breaking that she discovers the power of God's reshaping hand. It is in the silence after betrayal that she feels the loudness of God's music presence. It is in the emptiness left behind by someone's absence that she becomes filled with divine purpose. And as she steps forward, she begins to understand that the hurt was not a detour. It was a divine rerouting. God was not punishing her. He was preparing her. God was not ignoring her. He was elevating her. God was not allowing her heart to shatter, to destroy her spirit. He was expanding her capacity to receive what he planned long before the man who hurt her ever entered her life. The chosen woman discovers a deeper truth. The man who hurt her was never strong enough, wise enough, or spiritually grounded enough to walk the path that God designed, specifically music or her. He was a chapter, not the conclusion, a season, not the music destiny, a lesson, not the promise. And the moment she recognizes this, she stops grieving over what could have been music and begins celebrating what will be. She realizes that her heartbreak was a threshold, music, and once she stepped across it, she entered a version of herself that she had never met before, a version more aware, more discerning, more connected to God than music ever. What she once called suffering now becomes revelation. Every tear becomes an answer. Every moment of confusion becomes clarity. Every question becomes wisdom. The chosen woman begins to see how God used her to strip her of illusions, to free her from emotional chains, and to break cycles she once thought were normal. She comes to understand that love without commitment is not love at all, that affection without responsibility is deception, that attention without honor is manipulation. She learns that God does not allow a chosen woman to settle for a man who cannot protect her heart, cover her spirit, or match her purpose. Her pain becomes the guardian that keeps her from returning to what was never meant to be. And as she heals, she begins to recognize the silent strength that has always lived inside her. She sees how she stood through storms that would have broken others. She sees how she kept loving, even when she had every reason to shut down her heart. She sees how she continued believing in goodness, even when someone tried to convince her that loyalty was rare. She realizes that no matter how deep the hurt was, she never let it turn her into someone she was not. She may have bent, but she did not break. She may have cried, but she did not collapse. She may have been shaken, but she did not lose her ground. That is the power of a chosen woman. She survives what was meant to destroy her and becomes stronger than the force mute that tried to break her. God begins to transform her identity, not because she was lost, but because she is being elevated. Muse starts carrying herself differently, more gracefully, more confidently, more purposefully. She no longer moves from a place of insecurity or fear. She moves music from a place of divine assurance. She no longer asks, why did he hurt me? She begins to say, thank God he could not follow me where I'm headed. This is the moment her spiritual vision clears. She sees that the man who hurt her was only capable of loving her within the limits of his own brokenness. He was not equipped to handle the depth of her spirit or the magnitude of her destiny. He hurt her not because she was unworthy, but because he was unprepared. A chosen woman learns that God does not allow her to be mishandled without using the experience to build a stronger foundation beneath her. So instead of returning to old patterns, she becomes intentional about her future. She chooses peace over chaos. She chooses truth over illusion. She chooses growth over stagnation. She chooses alignment over attachment. She begins to love herself in a way she never has before, not from ego, but from clarity. She begins to treat her heart as sacred ground because she realizes that God lives within her, guiding her steps and shaping her future. Her healing becomes a beacon of light for others. People begin to see the transformation and wonder how she glows after being dimmed, how she stands tall after being pushed down, how she remains gentle after being wounded. They do not understand that she did not rise alone. God lifted her. God fortified her. God breathed new courage into her bones. And when God lifts a chosen woman, No darkness can overshadow her again. She becomes a living example of what happens when pain meets divine music purpose. The chosen woman begins to value her voice in ways she never valued it before. She stops silencing herself to make others comfortable. She stops shrinking her brilliance to protect someone's insecurity. She stops giving her love to men who cannot hold the weight of it. Her voice becomes expressive, clear, and grounded. When she speaks now, she speaks with the authority of someone who has walked through the fire and found God in the flames. Her words carry weight because they come from a spirit that has been refined, not broken. The beauty of her journey is that she no longer seeks validation from anyone. Her worth is not tied to whether a man sees her value. Her identity is not determined by someone's treatment or opinion. She becomes anchored in the truth that God has already stamped her with approval. God has already marked her with favor. God has already equipped her with purpose. And once she accepts this truth, every room she enters becomes brighter because she no longer hides the radiance God placed in her. She becomes comfortable walking alone when necessary because she has learned that solitude is where God sharpens her. She stops apologizing for outgrowing Muse people. She stops mourning doors that closed. She stops idolizing what was never meant to stay. Instead, she embraces the unfolding of her destiny with an open heart and a trusting spirit. She begins to understand that her story did not end when the man hurt her. It began. Her future is not compromised by his actions. Her destiny is not delayed by his betrayal. Her purpose is not weakened by his absence. She realizes that God is her provider, her protector, her comforter, and her guide. She walks forward with full music confidence that better is coming, greater is ahead, and nothing she lost compares to what God is preparing to bring into her life. The chosen woman becomes unshakable because she finally realizes that the man who hurt her did not take anything music essential from her. He only took what she outgrew. He only removed what God was pruning. He only exposed what was not aligned with her spirit. She stands taller now because she has learned to trust in God's timing, God's wisdom, and God's plan more than her own desires. Her heart becomes a sanctuary of strength. Her spirit becomes a lighthouse for others. Her story becomes a testimony of divine restoration. And her life becomes a declaration that no wound, no betrayal, and no heartbreak can overshadow a woman who is chosen, protected, and guided by God. A chosen woman reaches a point in her journey where she no longer looks back with sorrow, anger, or regret. She looks back only with understanding. She sees how every disappointment pushed her into deeper alignment with God. She realizes that the heartbreak she once thought would break her spirit actually broke the chains that were holding her back. She understands now that she was never abandoned. She was being redirected, never forgotten. She was being fortified, never unloved. She was being preserved for something greater. In this awakening, she rises with a new spirit, one filled with peace that cannot be disrupted, clarity that cannot be clouded, and strength that cannot be stolen. When a man hurts a chosen woman, he unknowingly initiates the rise of someone he will later recognize as the greatest blessing he failed to honor. But she does not rise to prove anything to him. She rises because God is drawing her into a life that reflects her true worth. She rises because her spirit is too powerful to remain broken. She rises because her future is too important to stay tangled in someone else's immaturity. She rises because God has written a destiny for her that no betrayal, loss, or abandonment can cancel. Her heart becomes a place where pain no longer lingers but transforms. Her mind becomes a place where doubt no longer thrives but dissolves. Her spirit becomes a place where fear no longer whispers but is silenced. She stepped into a version of herself that only God could shape, strong yet gentle, healed yet humble, wiser yet compassionate. And as she walks forward, she becomes music, a testament to the power of divine restoration. She becomes proof that God can take the deepest wounds, music, and turn them into the strongest foundations. A chosen woman does not stay broken. She does not stay defeated. She does not stay tied to what hurt her. Instead, she takes every shattered piece of her heart and places it in the hands of God. And God, in his infinite wisdom, transforms those pieces into something more beautiful than before, something more resilient, more discerning, more spiritually aligned. And when she emerges from that transformation, she no music longer carries the weight of the hurt. She carries the wisdom of it. She carries the clarity of it. Music carries the strength of it. Her future becomes brighter because her past no longer controls her. Her purpose becomes clearer because confusion has been replaced by truth. Her journey becomes sacred because every step she takes now is guided by God, not guided by pain. She walks with a calm confidence, knowing that everything she endured was not wasted. It was shaping her, preparing her, elevating her. In the end, the chosen woman does not thank the man who hurt her. She thanks God who healed her. She does not glorify the pain. She glorifies the growth. She does not cling to who left. She embraces who she has become. She stands grounded in her worth, wrapped in divine protection and strengthened by a purpose that no one can take away. And as she continues forward, she carries one unshakable truth in her spirit. No matter who hurt her, God will always guide her, restore her, and lead her into a life far greater than the one she lost.